The goal of today, the goal of today is to look at how we start viewing cases, especially casework when it comes up, right? We had an interesting discussion in the last class in that one of our students um, had, in doing their practicals, had already gotten involved in some casework just because there was no social worker around in the area. It became a whole thing. And they needed to apply skills. And I think it's quite important that although we have a lot of the theory on the portal and the modules is a lot of theory, it's quite good for us to climb into a bit of the principles that guide us in how we approach real life situations. And that's going to be our goal for the remainder of the session. So number one, right? What is the nature of it? All right. So when we zone out, when we zoom out a little bit, we see that a social worker has to deal with individuals. All right. So number one, social workers deal with people. But all of those people have problems, and those problems have causes. All those people have reactions and experiences around the problem. Right. So the social worker, or the auxiliary in this case, is dealing with people, but those people come with a lot of facets and elements, right? That come. So you're not only solving the problem, you're managing a process in between that. The main task of an auxiliary is to develop self-direction and self-dependence, right? We do not want to create a situation in which we are responsible for the person's success or failure, right? They are still responsible for their lives. And because it's such a personalized thing, right, we need to be aware of all these different domains and how they all interact with each other. All right, a social case, when we speak about it, is a living event, right? So it's an event that is currently taking place, right? It's not a case study. It's an event that is already taking place that you have become involved in. All these events have an economic side to it. So there's financial understanding, there's a physical, there's a person within the event, right? There's the mental factors, right? So how are they dealing with the event? What's going through their minds or their processes? And then you have social factors. And these vary in proportion, right? So all of those are different. In some situations, economics won't be a big factor. In others, more physical and mental strength will be required than economics. In some, economics will be required because they have to pay for reports and what may be. All right. So within a social case, it's a living event. And this living event is captured by a range of factors. Give me one second. Okay, sorry about that. I was just confirming something. Okay, definition. So let's start with the basic definitions. Social casework is a method of social work which intervenes in the psychosocial aspects of a person's life. Right. So when we speak about casework, we're looking at intervention. The goal of the intervention is improvement, restoration, maintenance, enhancement. And this is by Warner Boom in 1958. Right. We're looking to improve how a person functions in society. We're looking to restore them to a state in some cases. We're looking to maintain something and we're looking to enhance something. All right. So these are the definitions of casework as such. It has been defined differently by different people. So Perlman defined it as a process where welfare agencies, so social work agencies, help individuals to cope more effectively with problems in social functioning, right? That's the one definition. And he broke it down a bit further and he said, a person with a problem comes to a place where a professional helps them in a given process. Okay, so this is very fancy words where we're just trying to define what exactly the criteria is that we work within. So what are the elements? Number one, you have the person, you have the client, right? Number two, you have the problem. And the problem, usually you have to define the problem to make sure that it is the real problem. They then come to a place or an agency or the social work office or the group that you're running maybe, or your outreach project. They come to a place where they meet with a process and a representative. So there's 5 parts to any case: the person, the problem, the place, the process, and the professional. Okay, that's quite important for you to keep in mind. So let's go into each of them. Number one, a person. A person is an individual with a problem and is the focus of our attention. Remember, we are person-centered in our approach. The person can be a man, a woman, a she-male, a child, anything to that effect. In difficulty, the person has a difficulty, right? They cannot solve a problem without some help. We refer to our people and those persons as clients, right? Now, clients don't always come voluntarily. Sometimes they're referred and sometimes they are mandated to come. The assumption that all social work starts with is that each individual is different from others. Each one has their own unique problem because of their own unique mix of the elements that make up their problem. Again, Elizabeth is the registered social worker on this course. She's actually the lead, so she will interrupt me if I get anything deeply wrong. All right. Perfect. So when we study a person, we should keep the following in mind. Number one, right, the history of the client. What is the client's history? Right? The agent or the representative in this case is responsible for collecting a history that helps us understand the picture. Number two, we understand that a person behaves the way they do with a purpose and a meaning. Nobody behaves the way they do just for behaving the way they do. All right? There is always something behind it. There always is a meaning behind it. Then we look at the effectiveness of the person's behavior. So, is the person's behavior bringing them the results that they need? All right? If not, then that needs to be addressed. Then potential problem versus real problem. So when somebody comes, right, what is the real problem that they are facing? And what's the potential problems that could arise out of it? And then we try and understand people through a biopsychosocial background. What that means is we understand the body, right? What is their physical state like? Psycho, what's their psychological state like? And social, where are they within the social structures? All right. Let's go. Molefe, can you take us through what we need to understand? Oh, no, what we need to understand by the problem? What is the definition of the problem? Remember, we're going through the 4 elements of casework. Can you read through the slide for me? Give my voice a break.
Read it out for you.
Yes, please.
Okay.
I'll interrupt you as we go.
Yeah, a problem is a situation, event, or anything which impairs the normal functioning of the individual and makes him handicapped.
Stop there.
That is bullet
Right.
number 1.
Yes. So a problem is only a problem when it impairs the normal functioning of the individual. I want you to bear that in mind, right? When you are assessing, when you have a situation arise, not everything that is said to be a problem is a problem. A problem is when the normal functioning of an individual is impaired. Okay, next point.
A problem is a situation which exists anyway and affects any person. That is by Horton.
Yes. So Horton came up with a much more general definition, and he said a problem can exist in any place and it can affect any person, which is true. Right? Next point.
These problems could be different types.
Right? So problems aren't, and again, I can't emphasize this enough, problems aren't by themselves as defined by the patient. Problems can cause other problems. Problems can take on many different types. There is no book of problems where you can say this is the problem, right? They are dynamic in their nature. And I'm going to steal the last one from you, right? It causes us to search for a solution. Okay, so a problem is defined by an impairment of functionality, a situation, a unique type of thing can be considered, and the problem is defined by the search for a solution. All right. So aspects of the problem. Once we understand a problem, we need to then start working within the space. Remember, you've done your client history, you've got the client, you've got the professional. Now let's go into the problem. Number one, what are the client's wants and what are their needs? What are their wants and what are their needs? So let's just take a moment here quickly and reflect on this for a second. Frederica, are you with us? Can you unmute yourself? Okay, maybe she's struggling to connect. Frederica, let me know when you've unmuted yourself. Okay. So number one, we need to define the difference between a need and a want. And this is where you as a professional come into play, because people will want a lot of things and think that the easiest way to get them is through a social work process or something to that effect. You need to ascertain what their needs are and what their real wants are, right? You then take it and you say, okay, what are the possible solutions and what is the capacity of the person to meet these solutions? So for example, let's take a very basic one. All right. We have somebody who comes to you, right? Elizabeth has mentioned that the first point of contact is identify the problem. And that's exactly it. That's exactly it. And this is what we're working through right now. So a person comes to you and they say, I have a problem. I want to stop doing drugs. Okay, perfect. Is it a problem? Right? Malefe, is it a problem?
I think so.
Why? Go to your definition of problem.
Okay, we said a problem in my own words. A problem is anything that a client can bring or come up with whereby they will need a solution from us so that we can be able to help them. That is on my own words.
Yes. A problem is defined by the impairment of functioning. So, do drugs impair functioning? Yes, they do. Therefore, it is a problem. Okay,
Yes.
good. Then, now we say, what are the client's wants and needs? Right?
Yes.
The client needs to stop doing drugs, but maybe the client presents with things like wanting the social element of it, wanting the power that comes with it, wanting the energy that drugs give them, or wanting to stop their busy mind, right? So we start making that type of assertion as to what their needs are versus what their wants are. Then we take the same client and we say, there are some possible solutions, right? Now we need to weigh up whether they can engage with those solutions. So obviously, the first solution is, okay, fine, let's get you to rehab.
Yes.
If there is no rehab around, if there is no finances to afford a rehab, if there is other issues preventing them, right, then that is not the final solution. We need to go a step further than that. Okay, so we need to look at what's the realistic options available. And then, very important, you need to look at what is your agency there for, all right? What are you mandated to do? So let's say, for example, you are doing your group work, your group assignment, and you guys are doing a group on helping children study better. In there, your organization's focus is helping children study better. Then somebody comes and says, I have a drug problem. Just because you're an auxiliary social worker doesn't mean you solve that problem, right? It is very good for you to be able to network and send that problem to somebody whose mission is that, right? Solving every single problem that comes your way is a recipe for disaster, basically. That is what it's saying. So look at your powers and what you can do, right? Elizabeth is exactly saying it right there. What are you mandated to do?
In other words, what you're saying is helping this person. First and foremost, you have to take history on what is it that the person is coming up with, and and thereafter you don't have to solve that problem on as a social auxiliary worker. We have to refer to a social worker, a professional social worker, or to someone else who will be able to ask this client. This is what you actually
exactly
saying.
Exactly that. You work in team, you work in tandem. I'll give you an example, right? I am a medical professional working within psychology, right? My specialization is forensic psychology. If somebody comes to me and they say, oh, but I have a problem with, I don't know, relationships, right? I'm a psychologist. I should be able to deal with this. And yes, I can. However, my mandate and what I offer is forensics. So it is wise for me at this point to go to my company and to say, listen, we're going to refer this person to the relationship psychologist who works down the road. Right? Just because I have the skills to do it, I need to go back to what I'm mandated to do, what I'm required to do, and what my agency offers. Okay, now, problems tend to create chain reactions. And I want you to think about this for a little bit, right? Very often, one problem leads to many other problems, right? When you are assessing a problem, I want you to become aware of what the chain reaction is. So what happened before the problem? What was the problem that caused this problem? And what is the problem that caused that problem? And then what's this problem going to cause next? So that you see that it doesn't stop there. So look at the drug addict that comes to you, right? Did this drug addiction start out of nowhere? Realistically, no. Right? It started probably because of another problem. Right? Is the problem going to be just the use of drugs and sleeping all day if that's the case? No. It's probably going to cause problems such as theft, robberies, etc. So we see that one problem causes another problem, and we need to be very, very aware of that. Then each problem has a subjective and an objective case. Right? So a subjective case is how I see the problem, my problem through my eyes and how I experience it. That is subjective. Objective case is how anybody who doesn't know me, who doesn't know my personal situation, would process the situation, this problem. So for example, right? A parenting one is a very good example to use here. A parent comes and says their child is, and we've had this quite often, the child is a problem. You know, my child is not behaving. They are reckless. They are just naughty. They don't listen. They don't do anything that they need to do. Right? Subjectively, they are seeing that this child is acting out in certain ways. The child doesn't respect me. Objectively, if you're outside of that circle, you can see, okay, but objectively, what could cause the situation to arise, right? And maybe the child needs to see somebody for behavior control or medication, or there's a psychosocial issue. So objectively is without emotion to the problem. Okay, perfect. So those are the two biggies we did. We had the client, we have the problem. Those are the two main elements within this process. Then we have the place and the professional, which are the lesser, they're equally important, but there's less definition that goes into it. So the place of intervention could be the social work agency, human welfare agency, or a department of sort. It could be any place that provides psychosocial services, right? And that is monitored and controlled usually by at least one registered social worker, right? And this place must have policies and processes in place and objectives in place to help manage it. All right. Agencies can be private or they can be public. Agencies can be primary, so you go there for help at your community center, or they can be secondary. The court sends somebody to you for help. It can be closed, it can be opened, and each one of them would define a caseworker differently. Okay. I just want to see the comment here quickly. Be competent in your field, ethics of, yes, and that's it. And so Elizabeth has mentioned there that we should be competent within our field, and this is how you measure competency. Are you objective? Do you know what your agency provides? Do you know what the history of the client is? Do you know what the problem is that they're facing? And how do we work from there? Now, let's look at the three things that make up a process. Right? I might be talking very basic understanding, but I find that even full-grown professionals who have been in practice for many years sometimes do need to be reminded of a few basic principles that form our field. Okay, so let's begin. Number one, the process is a progressive interaction between the professional, right, and the client. So a process is a progressive transaction. It's not a once-off. It's not a magic wand that you have. It changes and it adjusts to the client and to the professional, right? The transaction. It's a relationship that it formed, a professional relationship. It consists of a series of problem-solving operations carried on within a meaningful relationship. So what it says is that when you're working on a case, there are a set of principles, right? Problem-solving operations that you carry out. And what carries that is the relationship you have with the client. So we're going to try this. We're going to look at this. This is how it's going to work. In the South African perspective, the importance there is that it's dual process. So both the client and the professional are responsible for making sure that this works. The relationship is what guides them through this process. Then, the process is an intervention stage in which the caseworker initiates the formal procedure of helping a client. Okay, and we're going to go into this now in a bit of detail. Now, first contact. The client has just arrived at your office, right? Number one, we establish the relationship. Who are you? Who am I? What's your responsibility? What is my responsibility? Then we build rapport. So rapport is we build the trust between the client and us. And we do it through listening. We do it through asking the right questions. And we do it through integrity. So the guideline here for building rapport is, it is okay to say, I do not know right now how we are going to do this. I do not know right now if it is possible. Instead of promising something that you cannot deliver. Okay, it is unethical to make a promise to a client because you cannot control that outcome. What you can do is you can build trust in them that you will be honest with them. Then we create a space in which the client expresses and can express what they want out of it. So let's say, for example, that person comes to me and they say, listen, I want to stop doing drugs. Number one, I establish the relationship. And I say, thank you for coming to see me. I know that this is very important for you because it must be very scary to come to someone and say you're doing drugs and you want to stop. Right? I'm a social worker. I'm an auxiliary social worker. I work with a social worker and I do A, B, C. This is my thing. I cannot guarantee you anything, but I want to know more about your story and I want to be able to see how we can work together. What is it that you actually want? How do you want to achieve it? Do you see how I've built the trust? I've established the relationship. This is what I do. This is what you do. And I've asked questions which allow them to express their needs and their wants. Okay, let's just stop there for a second and take a bit of a breath. Right? Up to this point, do we understand everything that he said? Is there any question from this point? Frederica, are you back with us? Try again. Frederica? Okay, I think maybe she's struggling. She's struggling to connect a little bit then. Okay. Frederica, I'll call you out again in a few minutes. All right. Okay, so I want us to just recap very quickly before we go on to social history. Oh, no. All right. And unfortunately, Molefe, you're going to be the one that you're getting like a very personalized lesson today. All right. Can you remember what the 4 elements are to any casework that we do?
Any elements?
The 4 elements. What are the 4 foundations of casework? I'll give you the first one. The first one is the person, the client.
Okay, the first one is the person that is in the client. That is the client. The second one is the agency.
Okay.
And
then there is the.
Sorry.
Yes. Then.
Yes. I said the second one is the agency, and the third one. The first one. Yeah, the third one. What is the third one?
There's the.
Yeah, the person. I think that we said the first one. I spoke about the agency, right?
Yeah.
The client, the agency, and what else? Oh no, I forgot.
Place.
Yeah, in terms of the place, it could be the private and the public agency, and it could be the local or the national agency, and what else?
There's a place and a problem.
And the problem, yes.
So it's the 4 P's: the professional, the person, the place, the problem. Okay, perfect. Now, let's play around with this idea a little bit. Somebody comes to you and they say they are looking for help from your agency, right?
Yes.
They want to. Let me think of a common problem that people might have. Just give me a second. Okay. Their problem is that they are struggling in a single child-headed household, right? So this person comes to you and they say, listen, my parents have passed, or my parents are old. I'm responsible for looking after them and I don't know how to do it.
Yes.
Will you help me? Okay. So number 1, right? Who's the person there? It's the person who's come to you, obviously, right? How would you start off by building rapport? What's the first steps you take with that client based on this?
Okay, number 1, first and foremost, I have to establish the relationship by explaining to this person who am I and what is my role and. And the second one is for me to check with them if ever they are able to disclose or talk to me about the problem that they are having. Then number three, I have to make sure that I made them aware that I'm not here to solve their problems, but I will refer their problems to someone more professional than me, because there's no way that I'll be able to solve their problem. And amongst that, based on whatever that we will be discussing by collecting history with this person, then I will have to establish as well that what kind of a help maybe they would like me to assist them with. Yes.
Perfect. And part of, yes, you've got it exactly right on there. And part of working out what help they want is working out their needs versus wants.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So let's go into social history. Social history is a principle that we use in which either a home visit or an interview allows us to build up the history of a client, the story of a client, what brought a client to us. It is a picture where we make an understanding of as much as possible, right, to understand how we all got to this place, this person, this problem. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
So after the client, the caseworker is the other big significant part of this, right? Because remember, it's two people with a relationship between them solving a problem. Okay. So what are the general principles? Right? Number one, acceptance. When somebody arises with a situation, it is not your place to make a judgment call, right?
Mm-hmm.
They do not necessarily need you to tell them that what they're doing is terrible. That does not help anything at all, right? We can be honest with them and we can say this is not helpful, but we also understand that they're here for help. Number two, the principle of communication. We communicate honestly, but we communicate thoroughly also with our clients, right? Next, individualization. The principle of individualization is this. We understand that every client is different and unique. What this means is we do not say, oh, I know drug addicts. You know what drug addicts do? A, B, C, D, E, F, G, right? That is rubbish. You do not know every single drug addict. And you do not know that this one is exactly the same as all the rest, right? So we respect the individualization of that person. Then we have a non-judgmental attitude, which we've covered earlier. We listen before anything else.
Mm-hmm.
Controlled emotional involvement is a very important principle, right? We do not allow our emotions to get the best of us. If our emotions get the best of us, we become unreliable and untrustworthy to the client. We lose that relationship. Next thing is we participate and we encourage the client to participate along with us. Right? So the solution isn't something I'm doing to you. It's something we are doing together. Does that make sense? The solution isn't something that I will do to you. It is something that you are going to help me do. I'm going to help you do. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Then confidentiality is important. Clients need to know that what they tell us is confidential.
Yes.
Right? We are not going to go and break confidentiality for our own purposes. Can you try and guess when is confidentiality broken? When do we break the seal of confidentiality?
Yes, I think it's when the client has ventilated to me the problems, and then immediately after they've left, and then I tell the third party, be it anybody about what has transpired between myself and the client, whatever challenges that the client is giving to me. Because I believe first and foremost, when we deal with a client, you have to reassure them that whatever that is going to be discussed is going to be between the two of you. So once you break that by telling someone else the challenges or the problems that this client came up with, then you have broken that automatically.
Yes, 100%. Now, when can you break it? When
When
can you
can I?
break confidentiality? When can you break confidentiality?
Okay, maybe I can just give it a guess. And if
Yeah,
ever
give it a guess.
maybe, yeah, if ever maybe I'll have to refer this client to a professional, a psychologist or a social worker. Maybe they will be maybe they can ask me to give them a history about this client. Then I think it is then I can be able to break that. I
Okay.
think so.
That you can only break. Yes, 100%. You're on the right track. That confidentiality is only done with the permission of the client. So you'll say, listen, I want to refer you. They've asked me for this information. Are you comfortable that I share it? Right?
Mhm.
The only time confidentiality does not count, and you have to explain this the first time you meet any client, is when the client is going to risk themselves or somebody else. When there's a risk to themselves, life risk to themselves or somebody else. What does this mean? It means if a client, you're doing an intervention now, right? And the client says, listen, I've got these thoughts where I just feel like I need to, they need to die. We need to kill them. All right. You then immediately say, remember, I'm now going to have to report this further because there's a risk. Or if the client says, I'm going to kill myself, you say, listen, I now have a responsibility to break the confidentiality because I need to keep you alive. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Confidentiality has a limit. The limit of it is you're going to hurt yourself or you're going to endanger somebody else's life.
Mhm.
But even then, it is not blanket acceptance. So it's not like, oh, all the confidentiality has gone out of the window. No, the confidentiality is broken in an attempt for you to get them the help that they need. They can still sue you for breaking confidentiality, and therefore you need to be very careful with how you choose it, how you word it, and how you explain it to the client in this case. Does that make sense?
Yes. No, I think
Uh,
Lisbeth got them right because I saw on the chat she wrote.
oh, I didn't see it. I haven't seen the
Yes,
chat.
by the time I was trying to explain, I saw on the chat she wrote that life-threatening, what. She got it
Yes,
right.
exactly. Well, I would hope so. She's honestly between the two of us, she's the most skilled at this. She's much more. It's her actual profession. So I'm very glad. Okay, perfect. Now let's go to the next principle, the last one: self-awareness. You as a social or auxiliary social worker, right? Very often you are going to see cases that really, really, really upset you, right? You're going to see all sorts of things that you don't necessarily feel comfortable with, right? And it's important that you have an awareness of yourself. Where am I? What am I feeling about this? So that this does not become about you, but rather stays about the client. Does that make sense? Right? We are constantly checking ourselves to make sure that we are not making it about ourselves, but rather we are making it about the client and about what's best for this process, right? Very often you see it in cases in which maybe, let's say, for example, you have just gone through a divorce, right? And you've got all of these feelings about the divorce and all that happened, right? Now somebody's coming to you and you're helping them go through a divorce. It is very important to not be in a situation where your divorce and how you feel about your divorce now influences how you work with this divorce. Okay, so we are very aware of ourselves within the process. All right, we're going to barrel on to, oh, I've covered acceptance already. Communication I've covered. Individualization I've covered. Non-judgmental. Okay, so let's just touch back on here again, right? We begin without bias. We begin without an opinion, right? And we begin with a willingness to help the client uninfluenced by others. Okay, so how do we control our emotional involvement? Number one, we do not indulge too much personally in the client's difficult situations, right? So we don't give of ourselves too much. We don't say, oh, you know, this reminds me of when this happened to somebody I know, and my child was also like this. We don't engage in those types of discussions. Okay, so now what are the phases that we work through, right? The last phase no longer counts, actually. That has been changed. We don't diagnose at all. This presentation is a bit outdated, unfortunately, in this respect. But these are the traditional 3 phases. Number one, you have the intake, the study, and then the diagnosis, which becomes the problem solving, right? Intake. So intake starts with the first encounter and ends with a second interview, right? It requires skillful probing into the client's problem. It requires that you know how to ask proper questions, how to read the situation to ask the right question, right? And how to ask follow-up questions, all right? Then, right, the areas you're going to be probing is, what is the problem? Which stage of the problem are we at? And why is the person coming now to the agency? Why are they coming now to you? What has led to this having happened? Because that will help you understand a lot more of what is happening, right? Once they tell you the problem, you then need to look at, does the solution they want, does it solve the problem? Is it actually directly linked to the problem? How is this going to affect this person's life, their family, their social function? Right? What is their state of their mental and physical health? Do they look, I mean, obviously you're not doing it as a professional psychologist, you're not assessing their mental health like that, but you're looking at, do they understand what's happening? Do they appear very stressed? Do they appear very anxious? What is coming up for them that you need to be aware of there when making that call? Then you start looking at, what are the resources available to the person? How do they appear? How do they dress? Right? And we're not looking at, do they dress in fancy clothing, right? Anything like that. We're looking at, are they looking after themselves, or is the level of stress so high that they cannot do that at the moment? Then we look at their feelings. How intense is it? How real is it? And then for more advanced social workers, you'd look at defense mechanisms that are being used, right? We start looking around questions of motivation, right? Why solve this problem? Why is it important that you solve this problem? Why is it for you important right now that you solve this problem, right? We start looking into family. We start looking into resources, because we need to know, remember we said we cannot be responsible for a client forevermore, right? So we need to know, what resources do they already have that they can cash in on to assist them. All right. Then the study phase of the process is now when we are doing the research based on the initial assessment, where we are working now to solve this problem. This includes things like securing every fact. We check every single fact that is given to us, right? Because it is our responsibility to make sure we have the whole picture. We check every single fact. We make sure we understand it fully. Then, right, we make sure we have as much information as possible, right, about the matter, and we speak to others. We see, does it need a psychologist intervention? Do we need to refer them to a doctor for biological intervention? what is happening there, what's happening around us that we can then help solve the problem. Then we have the diagnostic phase, which is the problem-solving phase in modern terminology, right? And that is now when we say, based on everything I know, this is the problem the client is facing, and these are the possible solutions for them to solve this problem. Right? This can change as we go, right? And there is a process in it, right? So number one, the process is we gathering the data, right? What is the problem? How does it look? Asking all the questions, gathering all the information. Then we evaluating it. We're stopping, we're looking, we're talking to other professionals. We're solving problems in different ways. We're doing research. We're reading what material is already out there. And finally, you have the product. And the product is the proposed intervention. If you follow these steps, right, the chances that you'll come up with good interventions is much stronger, right? And it's the only actual way to address it. I'm not going to go into all of this because I think that I am probably going to burn out everybody's brains. At this point, it's a lot of things to process. All right, so Molefi, let's go back to you now, right? Can you tell me why is it important to have a thorough interview with the client initially? Mr. Fusi?
Yes. I think it's important to have a thorough interview with the client so that we can establish the problems that they are encountering at that particular moment. And number two, it's important that you have to get more about this client at that particular time. If maybe I can think out of their box, their families and so on, that is where the family background is very important so that we can be able to, I remember you said we don't diagnose, yes, but so that we'll be able to evaluate the situation so that you can get the proper outcome from whatever the client has presented themselves to you and so forth. That is that is the most important thing, yes.
Exactly that. So what we're doing is we're going back to the first principle of problems do not happen in isolation. Nobody gets into a problem just out of nowhere. Right? There's a whole series of things that happen before the problem arises, and you need to understand the core of the problem in order to provide the appropriate intervention. Right? For example, let's look at that parent who comes and says their child is behaving very poorly at home. Right? If you immediately go, oh, okay, a naughty child, you know what we're going to do? We're going to improve discipline. We're going to put a timeout corner. We're going to have consequences for actions and all of that. Without exploring it, we could be missing a dynamic which is important, which means that all of our interventions will fail and the trust within the social worker and within assistance goes away. But if we ask the right questions and we make sure that it's not based on relationship, it's not based on family history, it's not medical based, it's not this, then we can build a better picture of the intervention, right? For example, let's look at the other case of the person who says they want to stop doing drugs. They come to you and they say, I want to stop doing drugs. You say, okay, great, we're going to send you to rehab right now. Off they go to rehab. They do a year, 2 years, they come back, right? But they come back to the same situation which caused them to do drugs in the first place.
Yes.
Right? Have you solved the problem? No.
No, not at all.
You've just put a plaster on top of it whilst it needs an operation. So you need to be aware of what the whole problem is in full context, because the client doesn't necessarily see it in that way. They're seeing the big problem in front of them. Your job is to make sure that they see the problem it will cause and the problems that resulted in it so that we can work from an informed position. Okay. Does that make sense? It's a lot of information today, Molefe. No?
Yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot.
Yeah, so I'm not going to burden you with much more information today because tomorrow's a holiday also. I don't want your brain to be hot whilst you go into it. I'm going to ask Elizabeth. Elizabeth, do you want to add anything to this discussion? I know it was a very, very basic discussion, but do you have something you want to add to it to help illuminate?
I think you have covered most of the things that is happening in case when you are dealing with an individual person. What I can add is that I think you've already mentioned the professional values of social work, and then you also touched on the basic skills of communication and stuff. So it's very much important, like I think you've already mentioned it, to listen to that line, not only just to listen to the verbal communication, but also to pay attention to their non-verbal communication.
100. Yes. Okay. So let's quickly discuss that. What is nonverbal communication in this case? So number one is verbal communication is what the client is saying, what his words are saying. He is saying he has a problem with ABC. Nonverbal is what is he showing you, but not saying. And Molefe, very often, what they are showing and not saying is a better indicator of the situation than what they are saying. All right. For example, I can tell you that I want to do better at school, right? But my nonverbal communication when I speak about school could be that I cross my arms or I roll my eyes, right? So I'm sitting in front of me, I say, yeah, I want to do well in these exams. But then you can see I'm like, my whole body is saying, I actually don't care for it, right? This is important for you to be able to notice and pick up on a very practical level to be like, wait, there seems to be a problem here with the idea of school on a very simplistic level. Of course, it gets much more complicated later, but it's always good to start with very simple ideas like this and work from there. Elizabeth, that is actually a great catch. I didn't even think of that. Think of that there. Thank you so much. Okay, perfect. I am not going to keep you for much longer. I'm going to wish you a good luck with the rest of your studies. I'm going to post this recording on the group so you can always come back to it later and see what we've missed and what we've got. Good luck working through your course material. Module 1 is particularly difficult because it's all the history of social work in South Africa and how it came about, but then it gets a lot easier as you go. Okay, Molefe.
Yes. Nick, last time when we had an online class, I missed it because I was still driving. When I get home, I tried to connect, but I couldn't. Can we also have that recordings or materials of that lesson for that?
Okay, so the previous class I didn't post. Let me tell you why. You were doing a specific case discussion in which there was information of the client.
All right.
So I didn't post it because number one, you would learn nothing from it. It was a very specific, it was our student had gotten into a situation where they were asked to help someone and we went through it as a group of students to work out how to approach the case. And I didn't want that to be out there in the public. But this recording you will definitely get. If you go to our YouTube page, there is all the previous lessons we've done on there also. So you can just work through all that. We've done counseling skills. We've done all of these skills that are on there. And you can just watch them as you go through. And they're on the portal as well.
Okay. All right, Nick. The other one. Yeah, that is perfect. Tell me, am I the only male in this class?
No. We have, we have Shakir. He's another male. And I think we've onboarded another one. So we've got
Oh,
about 3 or
perfect.
4, but not everybody attends classes.
Okay.
Obviously,
No,
because all the compulsory classes are already on the portal. So not everybody attends, but you will meet them in the next class. I wonder what's happened to them today.
all right.
Usually they all, yeah. Okay, perfect.
Okay.
Maybe it's the holiday.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Have a beautiful evening. I hope you have a lot of rest tomorrow, or some rest at the very least. And then we can see you during the next class.